The screech of twisting metal. The bone-shaking roar of an SUV skidding off a rain-slick highway. The moment lasted only seconds, but for Elijah, time froze. He had only glanced up from the cracked sidewalk when the luxury black sedan spun violently across the intersection, collided with a barrier, and flipped. Smoke billowed, glass rained down like jagged snow, and the world fell silent in the heavy pause that follows disaster. People stood frozen. Some screamed. Others filmed. But Elijah ran. Heart pounding, soaked to the bone in the Tokyo rain, the 34-year-old African-American janitor didn't hesitate. He sprinted across the puddled asphalt, jumped the divider, and reached the mangled car, unaware that the man inside would soon become the key to his salvation. If you believe in the power of kindness, second chances, and the unseen impact one good deed can make, please take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share with others, and subscribe to Rappel of Hope. Your support helps us continue telling stories that matter. Elijah Johnson had arrived in Japan 2 years earlier with nothing but a backpack, an expired dream, and an aching hope that maybe, just maybe, starting over in a place where nobody knew his past might offer redemption. Back home in Georgia, his name was linked to a single tragic mistake, a bar fight gone wrong that had ended a promising basketball career and left him jobless, alienated, and quietly battling depression. Japan had offered quiet anonymity. He cleaned office buildings at night, lived in a cramped, cold apartment the size of a parking space, and sent money to his mother back in the States, still battling illness. He barely spoke the language. No one really spoke to him. And yet, through it all, he endured. Not because he had hope, but because he had nothing else. The night of the accident, Elijah had just finished his shift cleaning a corporate lobby near Roppongi Hills. It had been pouring, as it often did in July, and he was hungry, wet, and silently counting the coins in his pocket for the cheapest convenience store meal. That's when the crash happened. That's when he ran, unaware that the man he was about to save was none other than Hiroshi Takeda, CEO of Takeda Global Tech, a tech empire revered throughout Asia and known worldwide. The car was on fire when Elijah got there. A small flame licking from under the hood, spreading quickly. Inside, the driver's side door was crushed. Blood smeared the airbag. The passenger door had somehow stayed intact, and with all the strength his lean body could summon, Elijah yanked it open. The heat singed his arms. Shattered glass bit his skin. But he pulled the man out, dragging him across the ground just as the flames exploded into a blaze behind them. For the first time, Elijah saw the man's face. He didn't know the name. But he saw the tailored suit, the silver watch, and the unmistakable aura of power and wealth. The man was unconscious, breathing shallowly, his pulse faint. The ambulance arrived minutes later. Police took Elijah's statement. And then he walked away. No fanfare. No reward. Just wet socks and ash-covered hands, disappearing into the Tokyo crowd before anyone even thought to ask his name. But Hiroshi Takeda never forgot. The CEO spent 3 days in critical condition. When he finally awoke in a sterile hospital bed, his first question was about the man who saved him. Security footage showed Elijah. News coverage showed the flames. But Elijah was gone. A ghost in the city. It took Hiroshi a week to track him down, through city CCTV, building security logs, and finally, an exhausted building manager who pointed him to a janitor living in a rundown apartment near Sujanami. That was how, one rainy evening, Elijah opened his apartment door to find 3 men in suits standing outside. One of them bowed low, then extended an envelope. Inside was a letter in perfect English. "You saved my life. I want to return the favor. Please come to this address tomorrow at 9 a.m. Hiroshi Takeda." Elijah thought it was a joke. He almost didn't go. But something, curiosity, exhaustion, or maybe just the quiet voice of fate, pushed him to show up. The address led him to the penthouse of Takeda Tower. From that moment, Elijah's life began to shift in unimaginable ways. Hiroshi didn't just thank Elijah. He offered him a job. Not as a janitor, but as a personal aide, a position of trust and exposure that paid more in a month than Elijah had made in a year. Elijah, stunned, accepted, on the condition that he would not be treated as a charity case. Hiroshi only smiled and replied, "I don't offer charity. I offer chances." Working beside Hiroshi was like stepping into another world. Elijah was trained in etiquette, business basics, and Japanese customs. For the first time in years, he wore suits that fit and was addressed with respect. Though the board members side-eyed him, Hiroshi's unwavering support kept them quiet. Slowly, Elijah began to thrive. The sharp mind that once guided plays on a basketball court now absorbed financial data, corporate strategies, and diplomatic nuance. He was smart, observant, loyal. And Hiroshi saw something in him that reminded him of himself, a man who had once risen from obscurity, who had also known poverty and rejection. But not everyone was pleased. Whispers began to grow in the company. A black foreigner, an outsider, being groomed by the CEO? Some called it reckless. Others called it favoritism. But Hiroshi ignored them. In fact, he did more than that. He publicly named Elijah as his official protégé, his eventual successor. The announcement rocked the business world. Panic set in among Hiroshi's inner circle. Investors questioned his judgment. Board members rebelled. One executive, in particular, Yamamoto, a man groomed for power for years, saw Elijah as a threat to everything he had worked for. And so, he dug into Elijah's past. When the scandal broke, it was brutal. News outlets published stories of Elijah's arrest years ago. Headlines screamed about his past violence, his fall from grace, his criminal record. Overnight, Elijah was painted as a fraud, an untrustworthy outsider who had deceived the company. Hiroshi was advised to cut ties, to save face. Stock prices dipped. The board demanded action. Elijah, heartbroken and humiliated, handed in his resignation. He had worked so hard to bury his past, to build a new life. And now, it all crumbled. But just as he was about to leave Tokyo for good, Hiroshi called a press conference. What he said changed everything. In front of cameras and flashing lights, the CEO stood beside Elijah and spoke with unshakable resolve. He acknowledged Elijah's past, but framed it in truth. A young man who had made a mistake. Who had paid his dues. Who had saved a stranger's life with no expectation of reward. A man who had risen through sheer grit, honesty, and determination. Then, in a move that stunned the nation, Hiroshi stepped down as CEO, and named Elijah his successor anyway. "I would rather lose shareholders," he said, "than lose a good man." And slowly, the tides began to turn. Public opinion shifted. The narrative changed. Elijah wasn't a villain, he was a symbol. Of redemption. Of earned trust. Of what can happen when someone believes in you, and when you dare to believe in yourself. Years later, Elijah Johnson would become one of the most respected foreign executives in Japan. He introduced diversity initiatives, mentorship programs, and youth outreach systems both in Tokyo and back home in Atlanta. He never forgot his roots. Never forgot Hiroshi. And never stopped telling the story of how a simple act of kindness, running toward a burning car instead of away, changed the course of 2 lives. If this story moved your heart, if it made you believe in the beauty of second chances, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Rappel of Hope for more stories that remind us of the light in humanity. We'd be honored to read your thoughts in the comments.